All right, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We have a lot of great content to get to. So once again, thank you for joining us. I'm Andrew Graff, Chief Product Officer here at TeamDynamix, and I'd really like to welcome our guest, Nick Farthing, Director of Technology and Business Management at Raymour & Flanigan, a large furniture retailer. And we also have with us Kaylee Belda, who runs our pre-sales group. She's going to be giving a high-level overview of our ITSM solution to an ESM solution to give you an idea of what's entailed with a platform like this. So really happy to have everyone here, and I want to go ahead and just dive right in. And what we're talking about here are buying decisions around IT service management. Some of the key things that we're seeing drive these decisions as our markets have changed, right, for all of us. And I think the last 24 months have been a testament to IT's influence and power, but also has put a lot of stress on our organizations too. So what we find here when we're looking at ITSM platforms, a couple key things. One is total cost of ownership. So we're finding a lot of organizations are placed under budget pressure and trying to find a solution that meets your enterprise needs for service management, right? Low end enterprise service management, IT service management solutions typically don't meet the functional requirements, and finding something that you can afford, and not just from a licensing or implementation standpoint, but also from a cost of ownership. So that care and feeding, that analogy of a free puppy, right? So these are some things that are really driving these considerations. Improving self-service and adoption and usage. So finding a way that self-service becomes the prevalent way service is fulfilled, requested and fulfilled. That drives down costs and also drives up satisfaction in many cases. You know, we're also looking at resource optimization. So how do we provide tools that really allow our teams to do the work they do best and get the other stuff out of the way? That administrative work, processes that are not efficient, right? Highly error prone, should really be running 24/7. How do we automate those? How do we make that flow of work easier? We're also looking at enterprise service management as opposed to just IT service management. You've heard me use that term a couple times. Enterprise service management is inclusive of IT service management, but there's a lot of service in organizations, and trying to support the whole organization on a single platform has been very beneficial. And also that sort of digital transformation. I mentioned it a little bit. How do we automate what can be automated to allow our people to be most effective and to spend time where it's most needed and where their skills are most needed? And then also reducing risk. I think that's really an important part of this too. So we're going to dive into these and a bunch of other topics, but to start, I'm going to dive into a question for Nick. So Nick, as you're managing a growing organization that has obviously been through its share of challenges and thrived through this as well, what do you consider the top challenge for IT leaders when it comes to IT service management? What has been your experience?
Thank you, Andrew. I'd say, but the easy answer would be say things like organizing the work, transparency of the work, managing resources, having a service portal, dealing with end user self-service adoption, things like that. That's a lot of times what you hear in a conversation such as this. But my experience was a little bit different. I mean, I had all of those same things, but the obtaining buy-in to implement, there's never a good time to implement something like this. And then, getting the consumer behavior to change after you've implemented. So, there's just I found that there's just an overall a large lack of understanding of what IT service management truly is, and that a project such as this to implement will always be a project that is going to increase revenue or enrollment will always win over something like this. But then once you get it in, to get people to actually use it and to exploit all the capabilities of service management can be a challenge at times.
Certainly, yeah, we have certainly seen that, and sometimes it's proof is in the pudding, and starting small and expanding is something that we've seen that a lot of organizations have been successful with. As we dive into this, let's tackle this resource drain, and both on the resources itself and the budgets that we have. So as we studied the market, a couple things we found that I thought were really interesting when IT leaders were looking to improve how their resources are utilized look at budget. 51% said that the project intake process was something they really wanted to focus on, that being able to make sure that we're focusing resources and dollars on the right projects and being able to justify against all of the options. I'm sure all of us have more project potential on our plates than we can possibly deliver on, and being able to, in an objective way, frame which are going to be the most impactful, what best aligns with our strategy, best aligns with our resource availability, skill sets, budgets. 55% said portal improvements. So really trying to drive how their users can access their services and knowledge. 42% said workflow. So how do we automate processes that can be automated, or a hybrid process where we have human and automation? And also 100% of those responding said that resource and budget constraints were real. So this is, I think, a very pressing issue across your space. And one of the things that we've seen here is that single platform approach where, you have resources that work on service. Some people work on service most of the time, some work on change, some work on problem, some work on release, but people also work on projects and operational work. So this fusion of not looking at a resource as, hey, they're only doing this, they're only doing service management, or they're only doing project management, or they work on their service management over here, their operation stuff here, and their project stuff here, that's falling to the wayside, and we're seeing some consolidation there. So Nick, as we think about this, what has been the benefit of bringing service management together with project portfolio management at Raymore and Flanagan?
I'd say the biggest thing for us is comes down to resource management and capacity planning. When you look at ITSM and PPM together, and this is the opinion of me, Nick. In IT, there's only 4 things that we do. We work on incidents, service requests, projects, and changes. That's it. So when you have ITSM and PPM together, your change management, your incident and service request management is being addressed under the ITSM portion of it, but the projects need to be addressed as well. And germane to the slide that you just had, you have people working across those 4 work streams, and you have to manage their capacity very, very specifically in order to be successful to, one, support the needs of the business through the ITSM side, but you need to deliver those projects because that's really what drives your business or your institution forward. So for me, it's always been capacity planning and resource management. But there is just getting that waste out of the way of, well, I shouldn't say waste, the service requests and the distractions, so that we can really work on what's value to the organization is really very important.
It's interesting to restate something you said a little differently. One of the things that we have found to be a compelling argument for both is that when you think about services, whether you're providing them internally to internal customers or externally to your external customers, a project by its nature does one of a few things. It replaces a service, it fundamentally changes a service, or it adds a new service. So when you think about the life cycle of the service, project portfolio management plays a key part of that. Which services are most important to us? Which ones are going to add the most value for our limited resources? And then how do we actually maintain and deliver that service on an ongoing basis? So there's continuity there, which I think is again, just a different way to articulate that. I think something that you just said. And as we're thinking about these tools, if you think about service management and the life cycle of service management, IT and non, the way we've looked at it is this holistic approach. And if you're not a TeamDynamix customer, you don't own TeamDynamix, you might have other products, you can think about how you might cobble them together in these ways too. So when we think about IT service management, right, the platform supports the key ITIL processes, for example, but then you have your enterprise service management, which is IT, but human resources, facilities, marketing, there's a ton of need for it. You have your service management portal and your knowledge base. We call it a client portal, but a way that people can educate themselves about what's available from a service perspective, ask for those services, track the status of those requests, or potentially have a fully automated experience, which we'll get to. Then you have your knowledge base, right? Helping people self-serve once again. And then your project portfolio management, which isn't just managing tasks. I think a lot of people say, well, project management and a service management tool could just be a task management solution. It gets into the resource capacity, it gets into the intake and governance and planning. It's fairly comprehensive. And I think the other thing to think about with these tools is starting with bite-sized chunks, digestible bites. But what we've also seen is we'll see people who started with tools that didn't have full capability, and then 2 years into it, they're upgrading, right? And it's costly, it's a lot of change. Now, the bottom half of this is all about integration and automation. So if you want to think about how do we extend and augment the quality of our service, automation and integration plays a central role. And we're not just talking about automating a service process from your service tool to another application, right? That's an easy one to get your mind around. Think about complex processes where service management may provide only one component. So think about onboarding or offboarding team members. Massively complex, lots of systems touch, lots of scenarios. So as you're thinking about integration automation, you can think about using APIs or webhooks. So solutions should have a strong library of both, but also an integration automation platform that's not just focused on a narrow application of integrating the service management tool with another tool like Active Directory. You should be able to do that for certain. But integration automation is much more complex. When you think about all those solutions that you want to deliver that are complex, it's really important for the tool to support advanced integration automation. So, Nick, another question. As you think about this service management, right, and you have your workforce who supports it, what do you think you need to have in place to support your team? What kinds of tools and processes? What's been key for Raymore and Flanagan?
Well, one thing that I'm installing, the first thing I would say is that someone needs to actually own service management, right? And it's hard to have it distributed, and I've tried that in other organizations. So I'm actually right now in the process of transitioning one of my most senior project managers to be the product owner of service management. So he is going to own it, oversee it. And so that's going to be a big step in just getting the proper management. But in addition to that, on the componentry side of it, you need, in my opinion, a service portal, well-developed service catalog, a rich and ever-growing knowledge base, matured service desk. That's very important. And also a very experienced project management team with well-defined processes. So if you have some of those like just basic constructs in place with your ITSM application, then you can start to achieve your goals for customer self-service. And that's kind of the holy grail that we're trying to get to here. Get people to solve their own problems, fulfill their own services, get the knowledge they need so that we can stay focused on the work that provides value. But again, and then what I see too is that as you start to get people to use the portal, it's the behavioral changes start to occur once the consumers start to understand what service management is. And what I mean by that is that once they start to understand what service management is, they want more. And this speaks to what you're saying about going from ITSM to ESM. So now what we have at Raymore and Flanagan is all of our business units see this nifty tool that we have in IT that we can manage all of our work and manage the requests and the projects and have everything organized. And so now we're starting to see a demand coming from outside of IT. So starting to build a roadmap of how we're going to start working with our departments like human resources, property management, marketing, customer service, legal. We have our own internal learning and development, all of which have services that they provide to the rest of the business at large. So naturally, once they started to understand how service management works for us in IT, now it's what was very daunting for me early on in the process to get the buy-in and to get the backing to move this thing forward. Now that people are using it, they understand it. So those secondary conversations to scale to ESM become quite easy because now they're coming to me asking for it as opposed to me going to them telling them they need it. So it's a real flip of the dynamic when you start to get people actually using the platform properly.
Mm-hmm. I think we've seen that a common scenario. One thing that I find interesting, especially when we think about automation, you made the point that, hey, we're really trying to focus our team members where their intellect and their skill set is best put to use. So when you're thinking about automation, what we find is a healthy exercise is to look at, in whatever solution you're using from a service management perspective, what are the most commonly requested things, and rank them and really analyze what can we automate from these processes. And you may not be able to get everything automated, but usually there's a hybrid approach, and especially with other departments, there's a lot of, hey, we've always done it this way, and a tendency to pave cow paths because it's just the way it's done. But by further analysis, IT can take that analyst's approach and really be consultative to these other organizations, because IT typically has been, fine tuning this service management process for quite some time. And thinking about that process, it's a good segue to talk about ITIL, which is obviously the framework for a lot of these service management practices that we see put into place in organizations. So, can you talk a little bit about your experience with ITIL and especially change management? You mentioned it. It's something that is one of the 4 things that IT does at Raymore and Flanagan. So can you talk a little bit about how this has helped you and how you've leveraged it?
Yeah, and it's funny. The first thing I would say is that ITIL is a framework. ITIL doesn't tell you how to manage IT. It doesn't tell you how to build an ITSM application. It only tells you what you should be doing to effectively manage IT. So I think that that's very important. And then where ITSM comes together with that is that the ITSM platform, in this case TeamDynamix, allows you to implement ITIL constructs in a manner that makes sense for the individual entity, be it an academic institution or a large furniture retailer, right? Because the weight of what we may do for change management or service request management or incident management is variable by any particular organization. But the two methodologies of or a framework and a methodology of ITIL and ITSM definitely come hand in hand. So I would just say that quick story here. When I first started at Raymore and Flanagan, there were only a few people in IT that really understood or had any training in ITIL. And so I feel very strongly having an ITIL basic understanding or the foundations is a really important thing. And I would even suggest, depending on the size of your organization, to have every associate that works in your IT organization should have either been exposed to ITIL foundations or become certified in it. And then you got to look at, for your practitioners, do you hire that knowledge or train? And what I'm doing now is a little bit of both. So as we bring in new hires, as we've done some changes to our department, looking for people with ITIL experience. And some of them above a foundation certification. But then on the rest of the organization, we're finding a lot of great success. There's a lot of really good, affordable online courses, and then certification can be optional because really you just need the knowledge, and then you can scale and you can run with this. Now, when you start to get into change management, change management is a really near and dear thing to me. Now, ITIL really gives a lot about change management in terms of the constructs of what you need to put together to be successful with change management and lower your risk. And so I'll tell a not so pleasant story here, but Raymore and Flanagan had not been following a formal change management process when I came here, and I was a little bit concerned about that. We had a notification process. People would send out a notification that says, I'm making this change on this date at this time. It's like, this doesn't work for me. And come fast forward a little bit, we had some outages with our core ERP and our website that occurred around Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which for a furniture or any retailer, that's really bad. But what made this worse was that the outage that occurred, or the outages that we caused, it was caused by us. So after we resolved everything, the retrospective occurred, and the IT team unanimously agreed that if we had a formal change management process in place, we could have either prevented or greatly reduced the severity of those outages. And again, on those big holiday sales weekends, we're talking millions of dollars. So this really got a lot of attention. Within a week, we put an ITIL-based change management process in place using TeamDynamix as a platform. We've continually improved the process. It's totally woven into all the work streams of all the units within the department. And our outages caused by poorly planned changes has significantly reduced. They're almost non-existent. So it's had a huge impact for us, and we're really operating a lot better these days.
Yeah, and I your points about ITIL are well taken. You know, when we implement, our teams also talk about it being the library, right? The L is library. Well, you don't go to a library and read every single book, right? I don't know anybody who's gone to a library and said, I'm going to consume everything here, but you go to sections that you think are painful or that you want to learn, and you take what you need from that library. So that's another way maybe to think about ITIL. And the other thing that you mentioned was about training your team members. You know, we have seen this as a wonderful career progression opportunity for positions where otherwise it's difficult sometimes. And along with knowledge centered service, KCS, these are two areas that are relatively inexpensive, and they add valuable skill sets for the person who's getting the certification and also for the organization. So it's a golden opportunity. So I'm going to shift gears now to increasing self-service adoption. So this is a pretty startling number. HDI studied the cost of self-service versus calls that made it to level 1 support. And HDI is that help desk institution. So basically what we found, or they found, was that the average cost of a call getting to level 1 support was $22. The average cost of a self-service call was $2. So that's pretty staggering. And even if you cut that top number in half, that's still staggering. So moving to self-service can, if done well and adopted, as Nick, you mentioned, can be incredibly powerful. So first thing here is making data publicly available. So as you think about it, how do we enable the content so that people can get answers? How can they find the answers? How can they request the service, self-service? How can it be delivered in an automated fashion? And we'll talk a little bit about this when Kaylee walks the tool, but let's talk a little bit about what makes a stellar portal. And these stellar portals support some of those key fundamental items I just mentioned. So number one, easy to search and navigate. So not just the portal itself, but think about your content. If users have to go to your portal to find it, that's going to be difficult, especially before they really become used to it. So that content should be searchable via Google. Really important. Also, accessibility. This is becoming more and more of an issue where consumers, and especially organizations in the government space, healthcare space, education space, there's a lot more pressure and regulation pushing towards accessibility. Also, the ability to incorporate feedback. So hearing from customers what's working, what's not, that's critically important so we can improve. And then also make it easy to build. So, you know, a lot of times the people who know the services, know the knowledge, aren't developers, they aren't content management specialists. It should be easy for people to own their portion of the service request catalog or the knowledge base. And it should all be responsive. We're finding that a lot of organizations who have apps for their customers for service, they don't get used. People don't want another app. So it has to work on that mobile handset. You know, as you look at this, we did a market study, and out of a possible score of 5, the average was 2.77. So we've got people on average about 50% happy. So it's really, really important that for a lot of organizations that they're taking a serious look at this. So the other thing we talked about was a single platform. We talked about it within the frame of IT with service management, project portfolio management being together. But this becomes really important, as Nick was mentioning, in other groups who are also providing service, who could also benefit from having a streamlined experience for the customers and streamlined workflow internally. So this is really branching and expanding dramatically across organizations in all sorts of departments. I mean, if you think about all the areas in the organization that have requests for things, they need to provide answers. It's everywhere in the organization. And this is an area that IT usually has an opportunity to lead, to become consultative. You know, I think the common refrain over the past 20 months is IT has really shown its colors. And this has been a time for IT to shine and to justify investments in IT. This is also, when we talk about enterprise service management, an opportunity for IT to improve its strategic positioning by helping and coaching these other organizations through business analysis, and deployment of service management practices. We've seen it to be a huge opportunity. And a lot of times it starts in IT and then it might move to human resources, right? That's another major area where requests are being fulfilled, questions are being asked. And then it just seems to move and permeate across the organization. And all these organizations have their own tech stacks too. So when we think about integration and automation, we can't just think about the tools that we need to integrate with from an IT perspective, because the organization is much broader. You know, HR has their own tech stack, marketing has their own tech stack, facilities has their own tech stack. All this stuff needs to talk. So a really good integration automation platform will help make that happen. It makes it incredibly effective. So as you're going out and looking at an ITSM platform, that integration layer, it really needs to work with all of the tools in the ecosystem, not just the ones that are IT specific. And I think that's something that is easy to look past. So Nick, back to you. We have a couple questions here before we get into a demo to essentially put some images and screen time with IT management ESM solution in front of people. So, tell us about the before TeamDynamix. What were you doing? What were the challenges? And what were some of those quick wins? What were you able to achieve early, and sort of what does that evolutionary path look like? Nick, you may be on mute.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I feel like you have a camera and a microphone in my home office, because a lot of the content on the last few slides is stuff that comes out of my mouth continually throughout the day to a lot of my peers across the business. I got it. Those are really good. But to your question here, challenges we had before, again, for me, it was the lack of visibility of the work that was being done. And I always say to the managers and everyone else that works for me and around me, if you can't see it, you cannot manage it. The other thing was the distraction. I mentioned a lot about the service requests and things like that. The phone calls, the emails, and the stop and pop-ins from our consumers with everyone's favorite question: where's my stuff? When's it going to be ready? Those are distractions that take us away from actually working on your stuff and getting it to you. So those were big things. But then, we had multiple systems for ticketing, project management. We had multiple asset management repositories. We had no resource management tools, no capacity planning tools, no client portal, no searchable knowledge base, no self-service. So I walked into I didn't have a lot of things here. So it was easy to, it's never been easy, but it was easy to point to where the problems were because there were so many. But the big one was lack of visibility of work. And we've really done a lot with that. Actually, right now, we have a process in place now. You spoke to workflows earlier. Each vice president of every department in Raymore and Flanagan right now reviews and approves every service request that is generated from their department before it gets to IT. Let me say that again. The vice presidents of our largest departments in this company have a dashboard. They look at every service request that their associates submit to us. They review it and approve it before we get it to work on it, because those vice presidents now understand that we have finite capacity. And if they send us waste, it is going to take away from their capacity that delivers them value to move their business forward. And that's been a great partnership. And it's going to mature more and more. And I'm sure I could tell by look on Andrew's face, I think we're going to probably talk more about that at some point in the near future.
That is impressive.
Yeah, so we're moving forward. We're really taking it seriously. But some things that we won right away. I mean, as soon as we went live, we went with the ticketing application first. So just to be able to organize the incidents and service requests on a single pane of glass and make that transparent to everyone was huge. Publishing our project status report for the whole portfolio of active and backlog projects, pushing that out to the enterprise, and then allowing them to be able to pull it from the client portal on demand. Again, huge. Exposing all those backlog projects to the business so that they can prioritize the project, not me. I am out of the prioritization business. So we will have true IT governance in 2022. And just as a note on that, when I came to work here 3 years ago, If I said the word governance to the wrong person around here, I would have been fired. And that's not a joke. Now I've got the vice presidents, the president of the company, and the owners of the company asking me to establish governance around the work that we do. So again, it's that whole spectrum of, if you can educate people, bring them to the platform and get them to use it, they want more and they'll beg you for it all day long.
Oh, that's great. So I think that's a great segue. So looking forward, you talked about governance, right? Taking a bigger foothold in 2022. What else, what else is happening from the vision perspective? Are you thinking about moving more out of IT? What does that vision look like at Raymour & Flanigan?
Well, like for me, I'll give you my fantasy vision here first, and there's a few things, but yeah, the big thing, you probably picked up on this tone for me. I would really, really like to eliminate waste and distractions, not just in IT, but in every business unit, so that we can just focus on the value work. That's very important to me. And so these are a couple of my fantasies here. I would like a service desk that has no telephones and is staffed by technicians that do not have email. I would like it, and I want to see increased self-service through knowledge management, which is very achievable, not so fantasy. But then automation and orchestration around our most common incidents and service requests. If we can implement that automation and orchestration, let a bot do it. I'd rather have a bot do something simple and have someone highly skilled working on the stuff that they need to be working on. So those are some of the things that I'd like to see us get into. As far as our moving out across the enterprise, right now we've started our enterprise service management expansion. So we have a proof of concept in house right now to replace an in-house developed facilities management application. So we're just going through some use case testing right now, and we're going to release it next month. And just for those of you that don't really know us, we have over 170 locations. We have a huge landlord business. We have strategic tenants that are around our stores. So we have many, many facilities that we offer. So this will be a portal that all of our company occupied facilities, as well as our tenants, will use this to report incidents and request services. And then all of the contractors that we use across 7 states that we operate in, they will receive their work orders through the portal, and they will also record their time and materials through the portal. And that's all really great stuff, but the big win for us with this is the property management team's now able to more effectively manage the requests. But the big one is the reconciliation of the contractor invoices. So by having them putting their time and materials into TeamDynamix, when they invoice us through our AP system, we now are exposing TeamDynamix reports to the AP system, so that our AP matching and authorization is now going to be automated in 2022. So that's like a massive thing for that department. Yeah. They spend most of their time paying bills all day instead of managing the facilities. So we're going to keep pushing it out to the enterprise, looking to, like I said, human resources, marketing, customer service, teaching, learning, and legal. And then looking at integrations, core ERP, finance system, CRM, and doing a lot. We're planning on doing a lot of partnership with our business intelligence team last year to integrate our TeamDynamix platform. We're a private tenant cloud, so we have an ODBC connection. So we plan to pull some of that data out of TeamDynamix, put it into our Snowflake enterprise data warehouse, and start building some visualizations with Tableau. So the goal there is to have KPIs across all of our departments about the work that each department does in a common dashboard, so that the senior leadership of the owners of the company can see those KPIs and manage against them. That's my holy grail.
I think that's amazing. And I think what I'm hearing is a common goal for high performing IT groups is, listen, they're really looking for a platform to choreograph the whole ballet.
Yeah.
And you can't just look at a service management platform to do that, to really choreograph. You also need the integration and automation layer. And so it's like, a ballet is, if you just have the dancers and no orchestra, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, right? But if you have both, it's going to be potentially phenomenal. Now, what I will also say is the challenge is, if you have the vision, finding a solution that can do all these things that has an appropriate cost of ownership. I think that's kind of one of the challenges you have in the market. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kaylee, who's going to walk through the TeamDynamix platform to help you actually visualize what a solution like this looks like as you go out and think about, your own procurement or your vision. So Kaylee, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to you for a moment here.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let's put some visuals to what Nick and Andrew have been talking about, specifically within the TeamDynamix platform. We've talked quite a bit about a lot of things, but one of those is around that end user experience. What is it like for them to be able to submit requests, being able to check the status, and really, how can you make that end user experience effective, which means that you're going to cut down on a lot of that noise that Nick has been referencing this entire conversation. So keep in mind, you're going to want to make sure that it is accessible on two fronts, making sure that it is WCAG 2.0 AA compliant. So that way, no matter what an individual's abilities are or their needs for assistive technology, it's going to come out of the box that way. Also, being built on a responsive design, being able to submit requests, check the status on the go from your mobile device without having to worry about zooming in and having to resize everything. Now, with the client portal in general, especially as you think about the concept of enterprise service management, being able to have multiple different service groups across your organization, facilities, marketing, human resources, IT, all in one place, the client portal should allow you to be able to do that. So you'll notice here on this unified homepage here, it's saying, hey, are you needing to put in a ticket to ask for assistance? Are you needing to check to see if we have any outages or maintenance? Or maybe do you need to self-help and find that information on your own? Being able to search across the entire portal to find either the self-help information I need or to submit the services. Being able to have direct landing pages where I'm able to look at specific departmental information and get navigated to those areas. And then also being able to have a unified service catalog to really help reinforce that one-stop shop mentality where your end users go to one place to not only submit all of their requests or their issues, but being able to check the status of those, being able to get insight into where you're at with those. One of the things that Nick mentioned was cutting down on those noise contacts of, hey, where is my stuff? So imagine that your end users can come to one place and they can not only see the status of where you're at with that request, but also get detailed information as to where you are within the workflow of that process. And be prompted if you're waiting on the end user to actually be the one that approves something or replies to something. And then keep in mind, we've really been focusing on the one-stop shop mentality for the ticketing side. But again, it's all about that holistic picture. They're not just asking you for break fixes or for service requests. There are ongoing initiatives. Imagine a portal where they can come to that same place and also get live updated information about where projects are at. And also being able to come in and even interact with that project along with getting that live information. And lastly, one of the creative ways that our partners are really making sure that they continue this proactive communication, like you see here, where it's automatically update as the project managers move through the process of the project. They're also leveraging the other types of communication tools that they have. Microsoft Teams has blown up and has become one of the major communication platforms because of our times right now. So we have a lot of our partners who are even taking the metrics and the dashboards that they create to proactively communicate with those department heads or those VPs. And so you can see that they can come to their normal channel for communicating and get that live up-to-date information as what's some outages that we're experiencing, or what's the total ticket volume for my group, or where are we at with projects and their status. Now, when we think about what this is like internally, what is it actually going to be like for a technician or for that individual contributor who has all types of work? Right? Because really, they have their ticketing type work, they have their operational type work, and they also have their project work. So let's jump into TeamDynamix and take a look at what that can be. When you're looking at a dashboard in TeamDynamix, you can absolutely have a laser focused dashboard like you're seeing here, where we're just focusing on ticket related endeavors. What outages are we tracking? What are our most and highest priority tickets? But keep in mind that they also can have combined views. And so they really can see that single pane of glass where I can see all of my priority tickets, but I can also see that alongside what are the tasks that are most important to me? And what are all of my assignments, regardless of the type, whether it's an approval step on a project request or it's a task for a ticket to be completed. And when we think about the idea of those tickets and the process of how you're able to allow yourself to stay on track, especially when we think about service requests, Andrew talked a lot about being able to automate and really supercharge your ITSM efforts. And so keep in mind that within a ticket, you're going to want to be able to have workflow functionality that can help keep the team on track with all the different tasks that they need to complete. And so here's an example where I've got a ticket where we have multiple groups across IT that are collaborating in one place for employee onboarding. And when we actually dig into this workflow, I'll show you a little bit of behind the scenes in TeamDynamix. And here's an example of that. So here's an example of employee onboarding where we have a bunch of tasks that need to go out across the enterprise to get this individual set up. And you'll notice that I have some manual tasks and I also have some automated tasks that are reaching out to an integration platform to be able to say, hey, once it's approved to be in that Active Directory group, let's go ahead and automatically throw them in to save that system administrator that manual step of having to go and add them to that Active Directory account. And everything that you're seeing is all reportable. And that's really the beauty when it comes to creating this single pane of glass. We've talked about Nick looking at the challenges of being able to know where are all of our resources being dedicated to? Is it to project efforts? Is it to ticketing efforts or operational efforts? So let's take a look at how you're able to create those single panes of glass. Now, what you'll notice within this dashboard here is, again, I'm hyper focused on the ITSM side. I can see a breakdown as to our metrics for how long it's taking us to resolve thing and the amount of open tickets we have, even alongside the individual workload and the actual customer satisfaction metrics. That single pane of glass can then extend on into having those ticketing metrics alongside our project metrics. And speaking of projects, when it comes to the actual prioritization of that, you want to be able to consider where your ITSM resources are dedicated. And so when it comes to actually taking in the requests for projects and then going through that dreaded word Nick said, governance process of being able to see where does that priority lie, you'll be able to have dashboard views that can show you, hey, here are all of the approved requests and their prioritization. And the prioritization should be able to be determined through numerous factors. Definitely things like scorecards, definitely being able to, judge your organizational risks, but also being able to get views like this, where you're able to see all of the different roles that you have across your organization, being able to see their time and where it's dedicated to. You'll notice here I have a DBA position and I have a couple DBAs. And I'm able to come in and I can see what are their scheduled hours and what is their capacity. So what does it automatically calculate for their availability? But when it comes to that prioritization of your initiatives, keep in mind, you want to be able to go, well, if we actually move forward with this project request, am I going to be creating a bottleneck with my resources that are assigned in ticketing, operational, and projects? Because it's not just looking at projects and it's not just looking at ticketing and operational. And then the last big piece of creating the single pane of glass is being able to roll everything up into programs and portfolios. It's really nice to obviously be able to know, okay, in a siloed fashion, what does IT have on its plate? And in a siloed fashion, what does marketing or facilities have on their plate? But being able to bring that all together to see that in a holistic picture really allows you to dig in and understand across the organization really of our overall budgets, where are we allocating that to project related initiatives or to ticketing related initiatives, or the amount of work that we're tracking, the hours, where are we digging that into? Is it in projects or is it in tickets? And allowing projects and project requests and ticket metrics to be tracked at that portfolio level alongside any issues and risks that you might be tracking across the organization. So with that, Andrew, that is a quick look into the TeamDynamix platform, but also just elaborating on some of those actual features that you really need to consider when you are out and you're shopping.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it, Kaylee. So we're going to
Mhm.
jump back in here with a couple more slides to help you understand how this market's being evaluated and how some of the analysts are taking a look at the market. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. So what we're going to talk about here are sort of the key drivers for what we call top of quadrant service management tools. And a couple of the key items here. First is integrated knowledge management. And the dark bar is how TeamDynamix ranked versus the rest of the market. So integrated knowledge management, end user self-serve capabilities, multi-site functionality, meaning being able to support more than one department with their own unique processes, their own customer-facing presence. Now that could be multiple divisions, multiple related organizations, the service catalog, and then also end user support. So your blocking and tackling, incident management. So again, these are some of the core things that are being managed or monitored and tracked. And I think what's important is TeamDynamix has been a gold medal winner here for several years. Now, as far as the company goes, there's some key things that are asked in this Infotech study. One is business value. So how much value is this vendor adding to the organization? Breadth of features, clearly important. Ease of administration, but vendor support. So one of the things we find is that service management is complex, right? There's ITIL, and as you evolve, we don't know anyone who is exactly where they want to be, right? Everyone has a vision, just like Nick does. Nick is further down the evolution than most, but in advanced and very capable and skilled, but everyone starts someplace, right? And often in organizations, there's probably some area in your organization where you are more advanced than other organizations. And there's some that are likely you're not. And so having vendor support to help you evolve has been critical. And then also ease of implementation. So these are just some of the things that are measured that go into these. Now, as you look at this quadrant, you can see TeamDynamix was top rated. This is again several years in a row, and you can see kind of where some of those other players fall. But we think, if you're in the market, and I can't say that TeamDynamix is the right solution. We obviously haven't talked. We don't know what your needs are, and I'd be remiss to say, hey, we're the best solution in every circumstance. Clearly not the case, but I think it's obviously worth a look, right? To at least evaluate. And I think the quote there is really important that Infotech came back with, and they just kept coming back and talking about how well we had done with our implementations for our customers. So I think that's critically important. So we really appreciate the time you spent with us. Nick, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I'm sure people took a lot away. And Kaylee, also, thank you very much for walking through that demonstration. So thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. Take care.
Yes, thanks everyone.